6.4 did not go to anything for the sovereign call required. That is what many economists like to call the deficit. Nice, simple, clean, 1.3 trillion. So we said, okay, for a budget, calculated simple math, and that figure over that period was 13.3 trillion. So we had what you call a shortage of only 1.3 trillion. 1.3 trillion was the only item that was needed for a budget, for all those budgets of 10 years. That is the top up that was required. That is what many economists like to call the deficit. Nice, simple, clean, 1.3 trillion. So we said, okay, how much did we borrow? We borrowed, Eric, to your shock, a figure of 7.7 trillion over the same period. In other words, if you do the subtraction of 1.3, 6.4 trillion more than we needed, more than was on any budget that had been put forward, more than any approval from Parliament, because Parliament approves a budget where the debt is anchored. That means that 6.4 did not go to anything for the sovereign called the Kenyan. It is simply a heist, but we didn't stop there. We went on and we said in the same period, how much money was allocated to debt payments? How much of our taxes, the ones that Kenyans sweat to pay, went towards our debt payments? Our figures had ended because we had done July up to July 2022. We found we had paid 5.6 trillion. To June 2023, we added another 1.4. So there you have 7 trillion. Then this last financial year that has just passed, with the controversial bill that you're seeing people rejected, this last financial year, we paid another 1.8. So that is 9.8 trillion we have paid for debt payments, right? We overborrowed by 6.4. Okay, what are we being asked for today? The figure is 11 trillion. This figure does not come down. When we did our audit in 2022, it was 8.5. Today, it's going to 11 trillion. You now balance it between what the dollar exchange rate is. This is a phenomena that we cannot deal with. This is a grievous fraud, and we are never meant to pay it. It is our chain, it is our slavery. And let me put that slavery in context as to the debt that has been taken. Two things I want to say. Our biggest problem is that you must understand that debt is tax in advance. Our taxes have to pay it. So you go back to our history, even before we had these great laws in the Constitution and PFM, Public Finance Management. When Moi handed over the economy of Kenya to Mwai Kibaki, Moi was collecting 170 billion in tax revenue. And he was paying, of every 100 shillings of that tax revenue, 28 shillings towards debt payment. He had in 1995 appealed to donors, in other words, the creditors, at a group called the Paris Club, and had gotten softer repayment terms. He was paying 28. He had rescheduled his debt. He was paying 28 shillings of every 100 to debt. So Kibaki takes economy, a group called the Paris Club. Of every 100 shillings of that tax revenue, 28 shillings towards debt payment. He had in 1995 appealed to donors, in other words, the creditors, at a group called the Paris Club, and had gotten softer repayment terms. He was paying 28. He had rescheduled his debt. He was paying 28 shillings of every 100 to debt. So Kibaki takes economy and he hands it over to Uhuru in 2013. And at that point, Kibaki has taken revenue to 1 trillion shillings, just under. Just under. And you know how much he was paying to debt of every 100? 18 shillings of every 100 shillings was going to debt payment. So he had brought it down. Great. We had seen the modernization of Kenya because Kibaki is the father of Kenya's modern age. In 2022, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, but I must say Uhuru and Ruto were in the same government, hands over to Ruto. And at that point, revenue had gone to something like 2.1 trillion, double. But 70 shillings of every 100 was going to debt. Today, as we are talking, 80 shillings, just under 80 shillings of every 100 of tax revenue we sweat and contribute goes towards the payment of one item called debt. So you can understand why he wants to come and tax us more and do everything he can, because we are at that state where you have just a manager who is simply just receiving money and paying debt. He's not managing any other affair. That is the critical nature.
Wait, Jimmy. What did you say? I had something 80, 100 something. Can you repeat it so that it gets deeper into our own marrow?
Yes. Let me repeat it. And unfortunately, as I said earlier, this debt did not come to us. It was never for our benefit. It is contrary to our laws, and we cannot and should not pay it. We should call it what it is, a fraud on the Kenyan people. And that fraud is leading to our strangulation and our enslavement, because this fraud continues for the next 10 years, unabatedly increasing. These debt payments do not decrease. We paid 1.8 this last financial year. We are paying a similar amount, probably even more, because I'm sure the dollar will not remain where it is. Then this coming financial year, it's going to be more in 2026. It will be horrific. This is why we are in the problems we are facing. And I want to explain this debt in terms of its composition. When Moi was rescheduling his debt, he was only dealing with one party called the Paris Club. That is where you have the bilateral donors. You have IMF, you have World Bank, you have what you call the bilateral agreements with the Western world. Today, we have a Madrid. We have 4 pockets. We have the bilateral Paris Club. We have the Chinese debt. We have something else called the London Club. The London Club debts are the Eurobonds you've been hearing about, are the so-called syndicated loans from these Western banks that are really commercial loans